Okay. All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another brand new Rugby Muscle podcast. I'm your host, as always, TJ. And once again, we're continuing the Rugby Muscle Applied series and our Fat Loss 101, 102, 10, whatever, mini-series on how to lose fat and how to do that as best as you can as a rugby player. So today we're going to talk about the best training for fat loss and performance. If you haven't watched or listened to Fat Loss 101, I would suggest going back in your feed. If you're listening on the podcast, make sure you hit subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit subscribe and go back and watch Fat Loss 101 for a real primer on why you'd want to do this, and a real basis of to get a real basic understanding of how you should be going about losing fat as a rugby player, because it is really important, because it isn't just a case of training as hard as you can. And you'll see this in this video as well, no doubt, but you should be watching the series accordingly. Otherwise, I'll just make one video and it'll be 10 minutes and life would be changed. It's just not the way it works. You have to put a little bit more thought into this, and once you get that, you can have one good stab at this fat loss and finally, change who you are forever if you're someone that's always been overweight, and you can get that monkey off your back and perform the best you've ever done as a rugby player. That's what we want. So, for today's video, podcast, whatever, we are going to go over the following topics. We're going to understand that we're just going to go quickly revisit how fat loss can help you as a rugby player. It's still kind of obvious, but it's always constant reinforcement is the way to go. We'll talk about high versus low intensity training. We'll talk about performance training. We'll talk about low intensity cue work, what that is and why you should be doing it. Tempo work, walks, NEPA, and then we'll talk about high intensity training and fat loss for you as a rugby player. This is really important that you understand. This is all mostly in the framework of being a rugby player, but it is really important that that is the lens that we're looking through. But all fat loss is fat loss, but we're looking at this through a lens of being a rugby player. So we've already understood that being healthier is going to help you be an athlete. There is no such thing as too healthy an athlete. So the healthier you are, the lower your body fat ranges are, in general, is going to, the better your body composition is going to mean that you're a healthier individual, which, in general is going to help you be a better rugby player, a better athlete, better human, because you're healthier. That's the point. You're also going to have a bit more health, you're also going to have more motivation, confidence, because, as someone has said this in the last podcast, as someone that's been overweight before, it is something that can be thought, a character that's always lingering on the back of on your back, something that you can actually take time to get rid of, and you'll find that will massively increase your confidence once and for all, and it will help you move forward. Likewise, it's going to help you not carry around a weighted vest when you're playing a game of rugby. It's also going to help you with your nutrient partitioning, as we've said before, so more of your excess calories or any calories are more likely to be stored as muscle tissue than fat, the leaner you are. And you're also going to then have more time not worrying about trying to lose fat, and more time worrying about increasing your strength, improving your performance, increasing your muscle, which takes a long time to continue to do. Fat loss should be a one-time thing and then it's gone. Whereas strength, you could always continue to try and gain strength. Muscle, you can always continue to try and gain muscle. Fat, we should get it over and done with, and we should lose our fat, and then we should move the fuck on with our lives. And constantly having this battle is something that will inhibit you as a rugby player in your training pursuits. And so we've already said, and in the last one we went over that in the rugby physical preparation pyramid, there is no fat loss training on this at all, right? You look at this and you see, it's hypertrophy training, aerobic capacity, movement control, absolute strength, all these different training and fitness components that we can improve upon that will help us as a rugby player, but nowhere is there a mention of fat loss. And there's a reason for this, because they're all fat loss. I don't know why I haven't circled special strength, I just guess I didn't get round to it, but all of this training, any sort of training that you do is going to burn calories. If it burns calories, it's going to, down the line, give you a chance to be in a calorie deficit, aka burning more calories than you are consuming. It's as fucking simple as that, right? So all of your training that you're doing is fat loss training. And if you pick out whichever applies to you the most in terms of what you need to improve yourself as a rugby player, then you're going to get the benefit of being of losing that fat, of burning those calories, but also the benefit on working on these other components that will help you be a better rugby player. And you're not just burning calories for calories' sake. You're not just doing burpees because they fucking are hard. You're doing things that apply to you as a rugby player and will help you on the pitch, help you in your training, help you become a better athlete, a better player. And so I'll pose this question to you now and say, if you're doing high intensity or you're doing low intensity, what do you think more is going to help you in this battle of calories in versus calories out? It's not as simple as you think, because you would imagine straight away, you'd be like, well, obviously high intensity is going to burn more calories. Yes, but what else goes into this bigger picture of our body trying to lose fat slowly or fast over time? What goes into this bigger picture? If you're constantly trying to, I asked this on the last podcast, if you're constantly trying to burn as many calories as you can every single session, do you really think that that's the best way to go? Do you really think that's how you're going to thrive and become a better athlete? Or do you think that might end up either hurting you or burning you into the ground, or increasing your hunger levels? Do we think that's a sustainable way to train? Do we think that constantly adding more into our training is going to help us lose fat and help us sustainably keep that fat off? Or do we think that might end up asking too much of ourselves? And I'll let you guys answer that question for yourselves, but I would suggest no, that's not the way this should be done. We know we want to burn fat, but we also know that we can do this whilst getting better. So what do you need to do to get better? It's kind of obvious, I think, but you need to focus on what your specific game needs. You need to go back to the Rugby Physical Preparation Pyramid Foundation and understand your habits and your consistency and your goal setting. You need to understand what it is that you need to improve upon to become a better rugby player, because all of these options are good options, but they're not good. Hypertrophy isn't a good option if you already weigh 135, or if you weigh 150 kilos and you're a few percent body fat and you're still trying to lose that last little bit of body fat, but you're absolutely massive. You probably don't need to gain more muscle. You probably would be looking at maybe speed and power development or movement control if you move terribly. Likewise, if you move really well but you're really skinny, or you're skinny fat, do you need to be doing more movement control, or do you need to be doing some hypertrophy work? It's all completely individualized to you. And think about this long term, not what do you need in the next 4 weeks. Like, what do you need if you were to take a year out and train specifically for what you need to improve upon long term as a rugby player? Which areas would you prioritize? How would you prioritize them? Create a structured approach to that. Make sure you get that commitment. And once you've got that commitment, you're not going to be distracted by the noise, by all these other things that, by social media and all what your coach is suggesting that you need to do. You're not going to be distracted by doing, I don't know, if you're already really fast, you're not going to be distracted by this next power training method that comes out and you're like, I might give that a go. Or, you might not going to be distracted by your mate's training regime that he's doing because it seems kind of cool and quirky. No, you're going to be committed to your own long-term plan. You're going to commit to it to a year, and we underestimate what we can achieve, or we overestimate what we can achieve in a month, but we massively underestimate what we can achieve in a year. And so if you picture yourself long-term, trying to create long-term change, what can you do? And then you understand that you want to make sure that you're fueling your performance. Yes, this is a nutritional battle, but you don't want to be sacrificing your performance in order to lose fat. That doesn't make sense. We go back to those fat athletes. That's why they exist. That's why you have those chunky, overweight guys that can still perform well, because they're still fueling their performance. If you don't fuel your performance, you're not going to get better as a rugby player. Now, with that in mind, we're not going to talk too much about nutrition at all in this video. We're going to be talking, on this podcast, we're going to be talking about different methods of training that you can do. So here we've got low intensity cardio. And, immediately people will be like, no, why would you want to do that? And first and foremost, it's cardio. It's in the fucking name. It's to improve your heart. People always think cardio, and they think fat loss, and they think mindlessly doing stuff on a stair climber or whatever cardio it is, and they think bad. They think fat loss, this is miserable. But really, you're making yourself a healthier person. You're improving your cardio or your cardiac health. And it's very, very, very beneficial for you as a rugby player. And you've heard me say before how rugby is aerobic. Improving your cardio system is going to improve massively your aerobic system. It's going to help you perform as a rugby player. The more efficient you can have your aerobic system, the more of your rugby can be aerobic, the more efficiently you can recover. I'll get onto this in a second, but you've got to understand that keeping this low intensity work is something that can absolutely help you as a rugby player. I've done other videos on that, so you should be understanding now that low intensity cardio can absolutely, definitely improve you as a rugby player. And not only will it improve you as a rugby player, you have a lot more room to improve. Think the fact that we can all do marathons, as humans, right? So we all know that person that was really overweight, but then they trained for, I don't know, even if it was 6 months to a year, and they were able to run a marathon. If you can run a marathon today, maybe, but if you can run a marathon in 6 months, that means you've got a lot of room to improve on your aerobic system, and that means that you can have got a lot of room to get better as an athlete and see that improvement on the rugby field as a better player. It will make you healthier, it'll make you more energetic in life, which will in turn burn more calories, and it has little expense into your recovery, right? If you're constantly doing those high intensity sessions that you saw before, that's going to eat away at your recovery resources. You're going to take, sometimes you can do real tough sessions and they take days and days and days to recover from. Then that means you have to sacrifice some of your other strength work or your rugby work or whatever. You've got to sacrifice some other training because of the high intensity training that you've done just to burn fat. Whereas if we're doing this low intensity cardio, like that might even promote recovery because you're getting the blood flow throughout the body. It's also very easy to adapt to how you need to do it. You can do it running, you can do it on you could do it mindlessly on a elliptical or a cross trainer, and you can just sort of zone out and watch TV. I used to watch lectures on the elliptical to improve my aerobic system. You can do it by doing other methods as well, which we'll get into. Doesn't necessarily have to be just low intensity, steady state doing the same thing. You can build other ways around doing it. The only con I see to this is if you've only got an hour to train every day, or you've only got 3 hours to train throughout the week, then this will take away time from other areas. And some people do only have a certain amount of time that they can commit, and it's not a case of, and this is why people always jump towards doing the high intensity stuff, is because you can get the high intensity stuff over within 10 to 20 minutes at most, right? You have a hard finisher, maybe even lasts 5 minutes. And then people that do those hard finishes, or they do those hard high intensity sessions that last 15, 20 minutes, and then they say, "Oh, TJ, I feel like I'm fit, but towards the second half of a game, I always seem to have a big drop in energy, or halfway through the first half, I have a drop in energy." And it's like, well, if you're doing the conditioning that prepares you to work really hard for 10 to 20 minutes and then stop, what the fuck do you think is going to happen with your game? Of course you're going to drop down. So understand that this is low intensity, but it allows you, to replicate a bit more of the length of a game of rugby and stay in that cardio or in that aerobic zone and not overly fatigue the heart. The heart gets used to operating for a long period of time. But it does take time, and you have to have patience with this stuff. So going back to what I was saying before in terms of how flexible the low intensity cardio can be, you can do interval training with low intensity. Again, 20 to 60 minutes total of work. I didn't say the beats per minute, but it's a 6 to 7 out of 10 or 120 to 140 beats per minute heart rate on any of this low intensity work. And you would just keep that, you would just perform intervals that would keep your heart rate within that range. So you would never push it too hard. You don't want to, it's not high intensity intervals. It's tempo intervals, like medium to low intensity intervals. You're doing 10 to 20 seconds. Maybe you can do 30 seconds on and then 30 to 60 seconds off. And, you can perform skill in those on periods. Here we've got guys that are performing a little bit of agility work, turning and going into some sprints, but they're not performing these at 100%. Potentially the guy at the front was working a little bit too hard here. He's probably sprinting a little bit too fast. You need to do this at a low intensity so that your heart rate doesn't go over 140 beats per minute. You always want to keep it at a 6 to 7 out of 10 intensity. So it has the exact same pros as a Q work that we referred to earlier. The cardio stuff still has this cardio benefit, still has the fat loss benefit, still has the benefits of not causing too much fatigue, but it also allows you to work on these other areas. So if you're someone that struggles for passing, you could do some passing drills for 10 to 30 seconds on. You could do medicine ball throws. You can do rucking drills. You can do any sort of drills. You can do any sort of you can also adapt it not just to the areas that you need to improve as a player, but adapt it to your needs. We've had people in the Rugby Muscle, in Team Rugby Muscle and Rugby Muscle Elite, who have been stuck in their apartments. They literally could not leave their apartment. They're still able to get some tempo interval work done by using burpees and doing lateral jumps and different jump variations for 10 to 30 seconds at a low intensity, and then having 30 to 60 seconds off. It's massively adaptable, and therefore it allows it to be less boring, right? I said before that sometimes you can go on the elliptical and just watch lectures or watch TV, zone out. That's because it's kind of boring. Here, you're improving yourself as a player. You're working on things that you need to improve upon, and therefore, you get better as a player whilst doing this aerobic work, whilst actually improving those skills. And the only downside I really see to tempo intervals, I say again, this can also take away time from other areas, but it's so easy that athletes decide, more often than not, and you probably watching this, if you go ahead and go and do this, there's a good chance that you're going to end up doing this too hard because it feels too easy. But trust me in that if you take this and you do this, I've had countless amounts of athletes now do this for a period of a few months, go back to rugby, and they cannot believe how much they improve. They feel like they do a few sessions and this isn't that hard, and I say, trust me, it gets a little bit harder, and we do increase it as we go. You'd start at the bottom end, you do 10 on, 60 off, and you do it for only 20 minutes, but you'd increase this work as you would go. And it never gets overly fatiguing. It does get more difficult, but it never gets overly fatiguing. But the transfer that this has to your rugby game is absolutely huge. And I wish more and more people would buy into it. That's why I'm creating this video. That's why I'm doing this video series and this podcast series. Now, other things that we can also do. So those are my massively two preferred methods of fat loss training. Keep it aerobic, keep it low intensity. Though if you need to do more and more, do more of that stuff, because that is what's going to improve your aerobic system, but also burn calories. And this is the key point: it doesn't take away from your recovery levels. It should, if anything, it can help your recovery levels. Obviously, if you do it too much, then there's an impact there. But for the most part, it's going to not eat into your recovery like high intensity training would do. Other things that we can do: non-exercise physical activity. Dieting can absolutely make you lazier, and so the more you diet, the longer you diet, the more your body just understands that, we're in a starved state here, we want to preserve energy. So subconsciously, you sit down a little bit more, you lean on banisters more, you take the elevator when you could take the stairs. You do all these things subconsciously. You lie down too much, you get a little bit lazier. And so the more you can increase that, the more calories you burn on a day-to-day basis, just doing day-to-day activities. Likewise, if you're already kind of lazy, or if you're just normal, you could set goals for yourself to burn more, to do more physical activity, to burn more calories throughout the day. And again, that will have literally zero impact on your recovery. If anything, it will help your recovery. You can also introduce daily walks, or just having a step count target. That would be an absolute fine way of burning more calories with very little, if any, fatigue cost at all. And if anything, it's probably going to give you a fatigue benefit, because it's going to de-stress you and just make you a generally healthier human. And again, I can't emphasize this enough: you commit to this fat loss phase, this can massively improve your hold on one second, let me get rid of that. That's not got rid of it at all. You can massively improve as a rugby player if you commit to this fat loss stage. Okay, you've got to understand that fat loss and body composition is a long-term thing. Get this done, and then you can spend your time focusing on other areas. Why is my... Hold on. Oh, it didn't even... It if you get this fat loss done, if you get this body composition in order, you can then really start to focus on building muscle, building strength, all the other things that go into becoming a better rugby player. And you stop having to worry about being overweight. You stop having to carry that weighted vest around with you. You stop that constantly impacting your rugby and constantly impacting your life. If you've been overweight for a long time, it is something that is a lifestyle change that you will need to change essentially forever. And then you can spend your time building muscle, and worrying about it. If you're someone that's been overweight more often than not, it's a lifestyle thing that you'll need to change long term. And then in terms of extra work that you can do, keep doing your rugby focused training. Use your time productively. Make sure you're recovering. Again, losing extra or burning extra calories or getting more into a calorie deficit is going to be more of a nutritional battle than it is a training battle. That's not to say we can't do any work, but the more work you do from this rugby physical preparation pyramid, or the more of your work is in order to get you as a better rugby player, the better you're going to be, the better your outcomes are going to be with both your fat loss and your rugby performance. And I can't overstate that enough. And so, really, that's it. There is no other, high intensity stuff that's going to be done as a fat loss tool. Your high intensity stuff can be factored into this, but it is to make you a better rugby player. It's not to burn fat. If you're only looking to burn fat, I suggest only looking at maybe doing some extra conditioning in terms of aerobic work, but that's, again, to make you a better rugby player. You're doing aerobic work that's going to improve you. If you're doing tempo work, it's going to improve your aerobic system, but also improve the skills or adapt to however you need to do it. And fat loss training, really, for rugby is as simple as that. People might want to overcomplicate it. People might want to argue with me. If you have any questions about this, comment below. If you're new to the Rugby Muscle universe, give us a thumbs up and make sure you click subscribe so you're constantly getting our podcasts, you're getting our new videos, and we are in your feed. If you have any more in-depth questions for me, Rugby Muscle Athletes on Facebook is where you can ask those. And then rugby-muscle.com/elite is where you can look for coaching from me into, maybe if you're someone that wants to take care of this fat loss once and for all, but you need a little bit of extra help, hit me up and we'll see what we can do. Thank you guys so much for listening to this podcast and watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.